love to post on Instagram or you just like having visual mementos of your travels, one of the most challenging things for solo travelers is coming away from your trip with pictures of yourself that aren't selfies, which we all know are not the most flattering pictures. Today, I am sharing 12 easy tips for using your smartphone to capture photos of yourself that you will love. Let's go. Tip number 1, use your back camera as much as you can. The quality is going to be so much better than the front-facing selfie camera, even if you are taking the picture in portrait mode. The rear camera captures almost twice the image quality as the front-facing camera, and it doesn't distort you as much. And if you're planning on printing these pictures, that quality can make a really big difference. And when you're shooting with the rear camera, try to use that 1x setting as much as you can, because this is going to give you the most natural looking photo, and it's going to capture a decent amount of the background. But if you are trying to include some large attractions behind you, like a temple or a waterfall, you are probably going to use the 0.5 times lens, that ultra wide lens, because this is going to capture a lot more of the background. But just know you might look a little distorted in these photos, especially if you're taking a selfie with the ultra wide lens. Your arm is going to look a mile long. But I have to admit, sometimes those end up being some of my favorite pictures because I can clearly put myself in the location rather than my face just taking up the whole frame and only seeing a little bit of the background behind me. Generally speaking, you're probably not going to be using the 2 times lens, the close-up lens for self photography, unless you decide to do the next tip. And tip number 2 is to use your timer or get an inexpensive remote like this one, which is only about $18 on Amazon. And yes, you can get some less expensive ones that are around $5, but this one had really great reviews and I've really enjoyed using it. And I personally wanted something that I could use for a long time and would hold up. Using a Bluetooth remote is going to give you so many more options for taking pictures of yourself because it allows you to step away from your phone. Now, I know you're going to ask about being scared about someone stealing your phone when you set it down. And here is how I take precautions so that might not happen. One is that I always look for a quiet area where there aren't a whole lot of people. If I can get really lucky, no one is around at all. 2, I try to stay facing my phone or camera as much as possible when I'm getting into position or even for the actual poses. And 3, I don't move very far from my phone. At most, I'm usually only like 6 to 10 feet away. Lastly, I use my gut sense about the area and people around me. And if it feels sketchy, I'm just not going to take that shot. I will say using the remote takes some practice to figure out where you want to place your hand that is using the remote. So you might want to try it out a little bit at home before you leave for your next trip. Tip number 3, while we're talking about gear, get yourself a small and easy to use tripod setup. I've long been a fan of the wallet tripod and it's great, but I recently changed over to this setup and I am loving it. Total cost between the magnetic case and the magnetic tripod, this only cost about $50 and it is so convenient to use. I've been using it a lot to take videos for this channel on my last couple of trips and it is fantastic for a quick setup. Here are the 2 ways that I use this tripod. Number 1, I set it up like a normal tripod. I find a flat spot, I open up the tripod, and I set it down. And if you don't have a Bluetooth remote, you can use the timer setting on your phone, and I would suggest giving you the most time that you can to get in place. And the second way I use this setup is I'll use it like a short selfie stick. Again, I'll use the timer here to give myself time to get set up and make sure that I feel like the framing is correct, because again, I'm using the back camera. And this has been a real game changer for me. So much better than trying to find random rocks or post or pieces of wood to set up my camera in order to get a good picture. Tip number 4. Now that you have your phone and gear all ready, let's talk about how you can look better in the photos. First step, try as much as possible not to fully face your whole body directly towards the camera. Your goal here is to create long lines that will give you a leaner and more dynamic look. The best way to do this is to find something to lean on. I just recently learned this advice, and I've been using it so much lately and loving how the pictures are turning out. Gone are the days of the sorority sister hip and elbow pop. Although, if you get a few drinks in me, that's exactly how all of my pictures end up looking. It's better to have one foot in front of you and kind of towards the side, and then use one of your hands to either tuck some hair behind your ear, hold your sunglasses on top of your head, or adjust your hat. And of course, remember to have good posture, your shoulders down, your chin up and kind of sort of jutting out. And yes, this is going to feel really, really funny, but it does kind of help eliminate the double chin phenomenon. And try not to do an exaggerated head tilt. And that this one has been a huge challenge for me. I am all about the head tilt when I have my pictures taken. So I'm trying to get that out of my system. Do any of you guys have that issue? Or is that just a me issue? I swear, I think every picture that's been taken of me in the last 20 years, my head is tilted to one side or the other. Cheers. Cheers. Yep, that's me. Let me know in the comments below if you are a head tilter. Tip number 5, get creative and comfortable with your poses. I know a lot of this sounds silly, but before you go on your trip, try to nail down about 3 to 4 poses that you are really, really comfortable with. And you can get some ideas for these poses by scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, and just find some that you think would be fun and different and ones that you would feel okay doing in public. Something my daughter shared with me a few months ago when we were taking some pictures of her and her cousins was thinking about posing like you are taking a picture for an album cover. I used this advice on our Puerto Rico girls trip, and I think the pictures turned out amazing. Now, of course, that wasn't a solo trip, but you can use the same idea. What would you want to look like for your album cover? I just think it makes you think out of the box and a little more creative with your poses. Practice your poses. Know which way you want to face. Know where you're going to be looking. Know where you are going to put your hands, and all of the things. Just like with anything else in life, you're going to get better and faster the more you do this. And then you won't have to spend so much time trying to figure out how you want to take those pictures when you are actually on your trip. It'll almost be like second nature to you by then. So I am curious, aside from the head tilts, do you have a go-to pose or poses, or do you have some really good solo photo tips to share? Let us know in the comments below, because I know I'm interested and the community as a whole is interested in taking better pictures. So any advice is helpful. Tip number 6. Photos with movement are very visually interesting. So use your video setting to capture the moment and find a frame in that video that you could take a screenshot of. Some of my best photos, meaning the ones that really capture the feel of the moment, have been screenshots from a video I took. Just make sure you move a little more slowly in the video if you're walking, so you don't end up with some blur, unless the blur is your intent. But that's really taking photos to the next level. The one downside to using a screenshot is the quality isn't as good as taking a photo. If your intent is to print pictures, it's probably not going to look as good. But digitally, as long as you're not too far away, I think the screenshots look great. I especially love this method if I want to get a jumping shot or I'm leaping over something, and they're really good for the walk away picture, which I always think is a winner. Tip number 7, think about taking photos of parts of your body that aren't your face. Just capturing the human element in the picture adds a ton of interest to an otherwise kind of boring landscape photo. I think these types of photos are especially great when you are trying to capture a stunning view or the general vibe of a place. Some of my favorite ways to do this is I'll show my hand holding my coffee cup. I also really love taking pictures of my toes in the water or my legs pointed out towards the ocean or the pool. You can get really super creative with this. Like you could get like a sliver of your eye, your finger pointing to something, or perhaps even your feet walking by a really cool scene. Tip number 8. Try to capture your photos during the golden hours, which are sunrise and sunset. They are called the golden hours for a reason. It is the most flattering light to take pictures for both you and your surroundings. And another benefit to taking photos during sunrise is that you should have a lot less people around you. So you could take your time, use your tripod, use your remote, and get a much bigger variety of pictures. Not to mention just enjoying the peace and serenity of a gorgeous sunrise or perhaps sunset, but those are going to be a little more crowded. Tip number 9, before your trip, go and get inspiration by studying other social media posts of your destination. Instagram is, of course, perfect for this. You can just search by hashtag your location or hashtag location photos. Not only will this give you some great ideas of general places at your destination or specific spots at the site you're visiting, but you can get some great ideas for poses too. Perhaps there's a post or bench in front of a cathedral. That's the perfect spot to lean on to capture a picture of you in front of the cathedral. Or like we found in Osaka, there's a secret little spot in the back of a beauty store that has a whole scene set up to get your picture in front of the iconic Glico Man. Use social media to find these little gems because you don't know what you don't know. Tip number 10, take multiple pictures of the same shot. I cannot stress this enough. Use the digital technology to your advantage and take 10, 20, or even 30 pictures if that's what it takes to get a picture that you really like of yourself. Now, obviously, don't hog up the space if it's a super popular photo spot and there is a line of people waiting. But still, take at least a few. Don't be a one and done person. This is where practicing those poses comes in handy really, really quick. Knowing which side of your face you prefer, how to stand, where your hands are going to go will make this process much faster. But if you're somewhere quiet where you can take your time, use this to your advantage and get a ton of pictures. Now, I will caution you here that you're going to want to go through those pictures and cull out the best ones and delete the rest so you don't end up with all of your phone memory being used up like I do. I like to quickly heart my favorites as soon as I can, so I'm not having to go through them all later. Tip number 11. One last option for getting some stunning photos when you are traveling solo is to hire a professional photographer for a photo shoot. I have seen some really, really fun experience photo shoots lately. No matter where you are traveling, you can usually find a good photographer to do this, and it's not very expensive. In Seoul, there are tons of companies that offer a photo shoot where you get to wear the traditional hanbok and walk around the gorgeous Gyeongbokgung palace for photos. And I have seen some beautiful photos recently on Facebook of ladies our age doing like a floaty dress photo shoot on Maui or some of the other Hawaiian islands. You can usually find these options using a Viator or Airbnb experiences. I haven't done it yet, but it is on my bucket list when I find the right destination. Tip number 12. Lastly, and I think most importantly, get out of your own head. Posing by yourself is going to seem weird, awkward, and probably pretty cringy, especially when you're around a bunch of people. But don't worry about them. You're likely never going to see these people again. And in actuality, they are probably not even thinking about you. So who cares what you look like when you're taking those 25 pictures to get the best shot? Just go ahead and strike that pose. For other tips on solo traveling, especially for those of us over 50, check out this video next. Thank you so much for being here and watching today. I hope you have wonderful and safe travels.